Welcome to the Atlantic Perspectives podcast.
Hello everyone and welcome to the White House in Europe with Maxime Lobé. In the previous episode, we left the United States under the presidency of John Quincy Adams, a diplomatic president, deeply shaped by Europe, who helped define a clear principle. The US must not interfere in European affairs, while European powers must stay out of the American continent. But in 1828, this vision is rejected by a large part of the American electorate. The man who comes to power is neither a diplomat nor an East Coast intellectual. He's a soldier, a man of the frontier, a popular hero of the War of 1812. His style is more direct, more confrontational, and also more nationalist. With him, the United States looks less toward London, Paris, or Vienna, and more toward the western part of the American continent. This man is inaugurated president in 1829. His name, Andrew Jackson. March 1829, Washington, D.C. Andrew Jackson takes the oath of office before a massive crowd gathered for his inauguration. His election marks a major political turning point. For the first time, an American president openly presents himself as the representative of the people against Washington's traditional political elites. His arrival at the White House also reflects the evolution of the country. America in the 1830s is larger, more populated, and more focused on the interior of the continent than it is during the era of the Founding Fathers. Around Andrew Jackson, the Democratic Party gradually takes shape. After the highly contested election in 1824, Jackson and his allies seek to build a national political organization capable of mobilizing voters on a large scale. One man plays a key role in this development: Martin Van Buren, a major political figure from New York State. Van Buren helps organize a modern political party based on local networks, coordinated campaigns, and stronger party discipline. The Jacksonian movement supports broader political participation and shows deep distrust towards certain financial and administrative elites. This organization gradually becomes one of two major long-lasting parties in American political life. Jackson himself embodies this transformation. Born in 1767, in a frontier region between North Carolina and South Carolina, he grows up far from America's major intellectual centers. Unlike John Quincy Adams, he has no European diplomatic experience. He does not speak several languages and never serves in Europe's chancelleries. His national reputation is built mainly on his military career. During the War of 1812 against the United Kingdom, Jackson commands American forces during the Battle of New Orleans in January 1815. The American victory greatly increases his prestige and strengthens national feelings in the US. This experience has a lasting influence on his view of international relations. Jackson believes that the US must be able to defend its own interests and earn the respect of European powers. But unlike Adams, he does not try to build an intellectual doctrine of transatlantic relations. His approach is more pragmatic and more focused on America's immediate interests. When he becomes president, relations with Europe remain important, especially economically. The United Kingdom remains the US' main economic partner. Despite tensions inherited from the War of 1812, Anglo-American trade continues to grow during Jackson's presidency. The two countries gradually tried to stabilize their relationship. Several border disputes still exist between the US and British North America. Questions about the main border and trade tensions remain sensitive issues during the 1830s. Jackson nevertheless adopts a relatively cautious approach toward London. He avoids direct military confrontation with the UK and generally favors negotiation. Relations with France, however, become more tense. Since the Napoleonic Wars, the US demands financial compensation for the seizure of American ships under Napoleon. In 1831, an agreement is signed France accepts to pay an indemnity to the US. But when the French Parliament delays approving the payment, Jackson reacts firmly. In several messages to Congress, he calls for pressure measures against France in order to force Paris to respect its commitment. The diplomatic crisis becomes serious in 1834 and 1835. For several months, Franco-American relations deteriorate sharply. Eventually, the French government agrees to pay the indemnities, bringing the crisis to an end. This episode illustrates an important characteristic of Jacksonian foreign policy. Andrew Jackson seeks to avoid conflicts with Europe, but he refuses any attitude he considers harmful to the American sovereignty or prestige. On a doctrinal level, Jackson generally remains faithful to the principles established under James Monroe and John Quincy Adams, although he does not develop a structured European doctrine comparable to that of his predecessors. The US continues to oppose any attempt at European intervention in Americas. The Monroe Doctrine remains the foundation of American policy toward Europe. But unlike Adams, Jackson pays less attention to Europe's internal politic balance. Liberal movements, European revolutions, and institutional changes on the continent receive little official reaction from him. This becomes clear during the July Revolution in France in 1830. The overthrow of King Charles X and the rise of Louis-Philippe changed the European political balance. Yet, the US does not intervene in the diplomatic debates surrounding the revolution. The American position remains the same. European affairs belong to Europeans. Jackson focuses more on America's continental priorities. During his presidency, westward expansion becomes a major political issue. The federal government encourages the settlement of American populations in territories west of the Mississippi River. It is in this context that the Indian Removal Act is adopted in 1830. This law organizes the forced relocation of several Native American nations to territories further west. It reflects a broader logic of territorial expansion and continental development in the United States. This focus on the American continent also helps reduce the relative importance of European affairs in Washington's policy. Under Jackson, the US remains economically connected to Europe, but its strategic attention gradually shifts toward the interior of the North American continent. When Jackson leaves office in 1837, transatlantic relations still remain important, but they no longer shape American policy in the same way they do during the era of the early presidents. Europe remains a major commercial partner and an essential diplomatic power. But the US increasingly sees itself as an autonomous continental power, focused on expansion and regional interests. Andrew Jackson does not create a new doctrine for relations with Europe. He extends the principles established by Monroe and Adams, but in a different context. Under Jackson, the US looks less toward European political debates and more toward its own continental development. The transatlantic relationship does not disappear, but it gradually stops being the center of gravity of American policy. In the next episode, we will see how Martin Van Buren tries to maintain this approach during a period marked by economic crisis and growing tensions between the major European powers. This was the White House and Europe with Maxime Lobé. Subscribe so you do not miss an episode. You can find Atlantic Perspectives on social media and on its website, atlanticperspectives.org. Music licensed via Epidemic Sound.